Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of ATX Television Festival Season 10. I'm Jennifer Morgan, the festival's Director of Programming, and if you're joining us for all 10 days, you've seen enough of me by now, so I'll try to keep this short. Honestly, I'm honored and a little bit nervous to introduce this conversation because I'm a huge fan of each of these panelists. In the Wilds, Home Before Dark, Rutherford Falls, all of these series have helped make this incredibly difficult year a little more bearable. And they managed to break through the noise of too much TV to leave a lasting impression. At the same time, I want to acknowledge that this is a conversation that's long overdue and one that is and should be much, much bigger than the 45 minutes we have here today. So we're going to keep having it, and we encourage you to do the same. Seek out the shows we're talking about today. Follow these panelists on Twitter, Instagram. Let your favorite networks and streamers and shows know that Native and Indigenous voices are imperative and necessary for making TV better, bolder, and more entertaining. I'm so grateful to each of these incredibly busy and talented people, including our moderator, Vincent, for making time to be here today, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. So with that, let's get into it. Please welcome our moderator, Vincent Schilling from Indian Country Today. Hi, Vincent.
Hey, so much. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I really, really do appreciate it. It's exciting times now, especially for Indigenous folks. Hi, folks. My name is Vincent Schilling. I am Akwesasne Mohawk Sego. I am so excited to be here, and I am very, very pleased to have been invited to talk about Indigenous narratives in television, thanks to the ATX Television Festival. This is their 10th year, 2021, and you can follow them on social media at ATX Festival and follow the hashtag TV for all, which you see in my lower right-hand corner. So we have some amazing guests on today that they have asked me to speak with. Some of them I have spoken with many, many times, some of them a few times, but they are all near and dear to my heart for some of the things they've done in Indian country and in the TV and film industry. I am absolutely blown away by the talent and the strength and fortitude and hard work ethic of all of these people. And I will introduce them now. First, we have Sierra Teller Ornelas, who is the co-creator and showrunner, executive producer for Rutherford Falls. She is just a powerhouse, just doing incredible things. Kimberly Guerrero is actress in The Wilds and Rutherford Falls as well, who is doing amazing and incredible things, and just also bringing this Indigenous narrative to television, both of you, as well as Sydney Freeland, director for Wilds and Rutherford Falls, and amidst a billion other projects. Sydney, you do so much work. I'm surprised you could be here today. You've got so much stuff going on. All of you, actually, I should say that about. And of course, Michael Greyeyes. Michael, as I speak and as I introduce you, here I'll even bring up that graphic that I had put up earlier. As we speak, Michael has just received Best Actor and winner at the Canadian Screen Awards for 2021. Congratulations, Michael. We are thrilled for you. And this is one of 7,000 awards you all are collecting as we continue throughout this year, you know. It's just an exciting time. So congratulations, Michael. And my name again is Vincent Schilling. I am the moderator and was thrilled to have been invited. And I would like to ask you all some questions and talk to you and ask some thoughts. But, you know, all of you, and I have talked to you guys, except for Kimberly, this is the first time you and I are kind of talking for the first time, and I'm thrilled about that. Before we get started, I just want to set this tone, because people want to hear from you all, but I do want to set this tone as arts and entertainment editor and journalist for about 20 years. I'm 54 years old, okay? As a kid growing up in the 70s, the only Indians I knew of was Felipe Rose of the Village People and the guy who cried when the trash got thrown on the ground, you know, who was Sicilian, actually, as a matter of fact. or the savage Indians that were literally painted red to appear on shows with John Wayne and such and so forth. That was all I knew, living on Compton Boulevard, literally. Yes, that Compton Boulevard as a kid. That's all I ever saw. That's it. I had no connection. And I never made the connection that that was anything of what I was as a Mohawk kid. Never, ever made that connection as a Native. Never. And I can't imagine today, because of what you all have done, you, Sierra, Sydney, Michael, Kimberly, are doing now. There is a kid somewhere right now, probably literally right now, sitting down, watching Peacock TV, seeing someone who's like them, seeing someone wearing some of the same things they have, a beaded medallion, or know of an Uncle Terry. This is profoundly unbelievable. I can't imagine being this little guy, seeing Michael Greyeyes just get Best Actor in Canada. I cannot imagine it, you know. And my wife says hello, by the way, Dolores. Many of you know her, but because she thinks you guys are incredible. But guys, I can't imagine. Or my grandmother, my Dota, who has died, you know, back in the 80s. What if she had seen this? I just can't, I can't imagine. Literally, I'm sweating from this intensity I have, and I'm fighting tears right now because this is something I never in my life ever thought I would see. Sierra, in the United States, you are the first Native American showrunner of a television show on Peacock TV. Sydney, you have directed show after show after film after film. Michael, you've been on television show after show. Kimberly, you're right there on Rutherford Falls doing all this stuff. Let me start with you, Sierra. Sierra, how does it feel? We were talking just before this. Your billboards are all over the place in Toronto. Did you say, Sydney? How does this feel to be and accomplished through all your hard work to be where you are? And my wife threw in just over there. She said, I'm so proud of you as well. How does this feel? And by the way, your mother, boy, does your mom have cred in terms of like, I'm the mom, I got bragging rights.
My mom is my PR agent, so it's kind of perfect that way. In honor of her, by the way, let me start. Yat a Sierra Nelson She Tabahenishle, Nakaidnet Bashishi, Twahaglina Dishache Do, Nakaidnet Additionally. My name is Sierra Taylor Ornelas. I'm Edgewater, born for the Mexican clan. Sydney, please don't make fun of my pronunciation, and member of the Navajo Nation. To answer your question, it's indescribable, really. You know, I think that we really loved making the show, and we infused so much Native joy into the show, whether it was the writers, the actors. There were so many people who came up to me on set and were like, this is different. Like a lot of Native actors, there were Native extras that were like, it's so cool to just be wearing clothes. They're like, we're outside walking on like a town square, and we get to just hang out and wear regular clothes and not in buckskin, and you know, and so it was a really while we were making it, it felt very special. But, you know, I've worked on shows that I loved and they just did not hit. I've worked on stuff where I'm like, is this going to work? And they're, you know, pretty well known. And so you just never know. But to feel like everyone, especially the Native folks on our show, just love Native people. We love our people so much, and to infuse the show with that kind of Native joy and to feel it coming back to us in waves on Twitter, and people emailing me, people, you know, from all over my life. It's just really wonderful. I mean, we really did something. It's crazy, and it just feels so good. And I'm humble to a fault sometimes in terms of like acknowledgements. I feel like being the first is sort of bittersweet, because like I should not be the first in 2021. Like this is a long time coming. And
absolutely disagree. Why not you? Why not you?
No. But I'm saying, what I'm trying to say though is, there should
Sorry.
like Charlie Hill should have had a sitcom run by a Native person.
Good point.
It's not that we're ready because there are people here. There have always been Native people who have been ready for these jobs and ready for these opportunities. I'm just the first person to get to do it. But you feel so hopeful for the future and so grateful for this opportunity. And then you also feel this sort of bittersweetness to those who should have had this opportunity.
What an amazing point, Sierra.
But that's how it
Beautifully
feels.
said.
It feels both at the same time, but it's incredible. It's really just incredible.
Yeah. How about you, Kimberly? You're right there. You look like you're about ready to explode with this smile. So we have to let some of those words out.
Oh man. I mean, Sierra, I was just thinking, you were telling me when I was on the set about that time we were together with the young group of writers and we had this conversation about how things were and how things might be. And so that was, gosh, how long ago, Sierra, do you think?
Years. I mean, yeah, it was a couple years.
Wow.
And so, just to, and then Michael and I have been working together for a quarter of a century. Sydney, I met you probably 10 years ago in New York with your first film. And, and now it's like, it's just so incredible that we've all been in this, I'll just call it what it is. It is a fight, and it's still a fight.
Yeah. Well said.
It's you said a word in that beautiful opening, and the word fortitude. And I really think that's a lot of what it is. It's diligence and fortitude. And, everybody, I have so much love and respect for the folks here in this panel and our network around us, because everybody that I know works at such a high level of excellence and brings their A game to every single day. And we've been doing that. For me, Michael, we've been doing it for year after year after year. Sometimes when there was nothing. It was like, maybe I was getting a tiny little guest star, on maybe a 2-day thing, but I went there and I freaking, did everything I could do to kill it, so that they were like, oh, Native people are around. They do excellent work. I'm bigging up our actors, our showrunners, our directors, like, hey, trying to just say we're here. And then, to see things, just all that hard work and the seeds planted and all of our elders that have gone on before us, like Charlie Hill and those other folks that helped pave the way. It's a huge blessing to get to be a part of it. And there was a part of me, especially around between 2010 to 2015, right before Standing Rock. I'm like, I may not see it in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just getting worse.
Yeah.
And so it's just like to see this, it's just amazing. And just even within the, Michael just won his, and the film in general just swept the Canadian awards. And just to finish up, I just remember so many times, and I bet y'all have heard this as well, when you've gone into a meeting with an executive, and especially the well-meaning executives, and they'll tell you how they really see it, and they say, nobody wants to see Indians.
Mm.
And when you're told that from a heartfelt place, like, look, I'm just gonna let you know, this is a good show. Nobody wants to see Indians. It's just such it's like, yes, they do. And now it's proven. And so it's just a really beautiful day.
Oh my God, Kimberly. And what you were saying just hit me, because I was sitting here and I literally have tears in my eyes, because I am sitting with a group of people who I have such profound respect for what you're doing right now and what you're bringing to this world. See, because I wanted to say thank you to all of you. And I really want to ask you all questions, because this is not about me. I've been the lucky person to ask to help moderate. It's about you guys. But I have tears because I'm sitting here with people who are helping heal the world for Native people, because we've been in pain for a long time. We have struggled so badly to be heard. And because of Sydney, because of you, Michael, because of you, Sierra, because of you, Kimberly, our children are seeing us and going, hey, you know what? I matter. not only are you helping put ourselves out there, but you're healing what has been broken. You are the balm of hurt minds, you know. And I'll talk to you in a moment, Michael, because you have so many great things. And I, of course, want to ask you, Sydney, how's it feel to I don't know really how to ask you this question, because to me, you seem like one of the hardest working people out there in Indian country. You are literally in the trenches, you know, doing this hard work for us, and it's tireless. And we are reaping these rewards of your efforts. And I want to acknowledge that, and I recognize it and say thank you, because you are helping to change this world for the betterment of Native people. And I want to know how it feels to have achieved and accomplished what you've done. You are the epitome of making your own luck.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. Thank you for those words as well too. It's very, very inspiring. Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's definitely it's both a surreal time to be here, but also in some respects, you know, unsurprising given the people that are here. You know, like, you know, I've seen Sierra just, you know, she's also busted her ass, you know. I've literally slept on her couch, because I didn't have anywhere else to sleep. You know, Kimberly and I met a while ago, but we worked on 3 consecutive shows together, you know.
Wow.
And, you know, of course, and Michael, you know, I've been aware of Michael for a long time, but Rutherford was the first time we got to work together. So it's, you know, I feel like people have been there. They've been in the trenches. They've been doing this work for a long time, and it's just there's sort of a bubbling up of this sort of genuine desire to see Native content and Native talent on screen. You know, and you know, my first feature was so hard to get made, specifically because it was a contemporary Native film. You know, and I remember the notes we would keep getting back from investors were, my first film was essentially like an ensemble film, had 36 speaking roles, 32 were Native. And the note we would keep getting back from investors is, there's not a market for this. We can't get this made, you know, and they would say, make it white, right? You know, or hire Taylor Lautner to play an Indian, you know. And I was like, well, that's not the story we want to tell. You know, we stuck to our guns and we were able to get it made, but for far less money and far less time than was, you know, that even we thought was possible. So then you get this whole shift, you know, and then you've got stuff like, you know, you've got Rutherford, you've got, you know, the Wilds, you've got Reservation Dogs coming up. There's all this stuff coming up, and I think it's a product of everybody, you know, not just myself. Everyone's out there sort of, they're doing the work, and it's just, we're just now getting opportunities that, you know, like it's, you know, for some people it's a surprise, but for other people it's like everyone's sort of been out here doing this, you know. So it's you know, I sort of like would gently rib Sierra on set. I say, you know, like, you're the tip of the spear, you know. Because I could see a scenario in 12 to 18 months where you have multiple shows, not only starring Native Americans, but written, directed, produced by Native American and Indigenous talent.
You all are just, you know, I've used this analogy many times, and what character of Dr. Seuss is it? Is it Horton Hears a Who, where the little guy is sitting on the trifid or whatever it is, and he goes, yeah, and then it finally opens up, and then everybody can hear the people, you know. And it's like, as Native people, we've been this massive community for so long going, we're here. And then finally that one little breakthrough happened, and here we are. And, you know, I've heard behind the scenes from different people that there are literal, everyone's interested now in Native content. There's, you know, people are wanting to look into bidding wars for content, et cetera. And then this week, Michael Greyeyes Kaboom. Kaboom.
Thank you, Vincent. Very, very kind of you. You know, I've been in the game a long time. I've actually been doing this about 30 years. So I'm just, you know, I'm kind of like just starting to get good at it. But I think the important thing to really, the thing that I actually really think about is that I'm not alone. And if you look at the way our industry works, you could look at it, it's like, well, what are the strategies that we're using to tell our stories? And in some cases, you know, like maybe someone said, oh, you know, if we get a big star, if we get our, you know, our Robert De Niro or something, or, you know, and then that from that entry point, you know, other things will happen. You know, maybe it could have been Will Sampson, it could have been, you know, a lot of other people, but that didn't work, you know, because of the way the industry worked. And what I think about, and getting the award was an incredible honor, is that I did it in an Indigenous film context. You know, the words I was saying were written by a Mi'kmaq filmmaker, and that the editor was also Jeff. So the work around me was supported by other Indigenous creatives and other Indigenous energy. So I think really what that tells you is that our success is bound together.
Nice.
You can't think about it any other way. You know, it's like the sticks, you know, one stick can be broken, many cannot.
Yeah.
So I look at Blood Quantum and the success we had, and of course it's due to Jeff. Of course he's a visionary director, but the rest of the work that we put in to support him and to support each other came from community. So really that's really a significant thing, that we're achieving this kind of success because we pulled other people along with us. Right? When we're alone, we can be picked off. When we're alone, we can be weakened or subsumed or something, right? But when we do it together, we're actually unstoppable. So
Yes.
that's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, it's beautifully said, because, oh my gosh, Michael, you hit this excellent point. And, you know, having been a journalist and focusing on arts and entertainment for about 20 years now, you hit something that's really incredible, because I've noticed in the trajectory of my career, because I've interviewed a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, and I see that many times these artists and Native artists who go solo at first really struggle. And the story and the trajectory of stories that I continue to hear over and over again is, but then after struggling for a while, I joined my brothers together, and then the bunch of us started working together, and boy, we became unstoppable. Like I was a comedian by myself, but then we decided to have a comedian team, and over again, the success comes when we once again embrace the essence of who we are. We are a community. And as a community is when we really excel. Sierra, how does it feel to continue to do the things that you are doing in this essence? I mean, with Rutherford Falls.
Well, I think that, you know, I came up in a lot of sort of diversity programs. I was a Disney fellow. I did like the National Hispanic Media Coalition's program. And I think one of the unfortunate byproducts of those programs is it can get really like kind of Hunger Games, like there can only be one and you're the special one, and like, and then you go into a room and you see all these other people who are sort of marginalized and you're like, am I supposed to knife you? Like, what do we do? And I luckily came up, just even though there were
that is so true.
Yeah, and there was just
Wow.
they weren't Native, but they were, you know, BIPOC writers. And I remember thinking like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to build community. I want to try to make friends with anyone else who is like me. And that was true for the other women writers. That was true. And I remember seeing Sterling Harjo, who's co-created Reservation Dogs. And I remember him on a panel, I think with Sydney, and he was saying like, we don't want to fight. He's like, we want to work. He's like, we're not here to tell you what you're doing wrong. He's like, we're not here to, and I remember just being like, yes, yes. And while I was developing Rutherford, he was developing Reservation Dogs. And I remember like we would have conversations and talk, and I was like, we're not going to do the thing that like, which could happen, which is to be adversaries when really, if this is going to happen, we're going to have to like all work together. And he was so of the same mind. And I feel like every person that I've kind of come into contact, other Native media makers. I mean, Jeff, like I've known Jeff for like over 10 years. I could not be more happy for him. Like he is so good at what he does. And I'm just, or like talking to Sydney. I mean, Sydney went from our show to Reservation Dogs. And it is like, it does feel like these like little communities that are all connected. And it feels like a really beautiful time because it's like the momentum is happening, like I was so afraid to be for the show to come out because you just never know, and it's your first show. But then it's just like knowing like Sydney sold a drama, like Reservation Dogs is coming, like that there's just the momentum is here, and it doesn't feel like the end of something. It just feels like the beginning of something.
Yeah. I mean, you make some really, really beautiful points. I mean, we need to lift each other up. We need to be like this, be excited for each other. This is a win for all of us, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? This is just incredible. I mean, this said, Kimberly, let me ask you, because a lot of people don't realize, another element of Indian country is a joke that we say is called the moccasin telegraph. Is how quick gossip can go from one point to another, or how quick, we can find out what everyone thinks. So Kimberly, I'm curious, what if some of the stuff you've heard about Rutherford Falls? Like what is the word on the native street?
Everybody's just, all of my people, my relatives and friends, and, I've worked for many, many years working with at-risk Native youth. I mean,
Wow.
like decades. And so just, everybody's just fired up that they can actually, just.
Thank you for that. Thank you for helping our community. That's heroic. I just want to say
Absolutely.
thank you and acknowledge that.
I mean, again, it's what fuels, what we do is exactly to your point. It's like, we're not invisible, story is medicine. And when you don't see your own story, then it's like, you got nothing, but no, that's changing. But everybody's just fired up that they can just, because, and the timing of this is extraordinary. And it seems meant to be that we were in quarantine, and, it was such a gift to get to work on Sierra's show with Sydney and Michael during quarantine. I have, A-list actors we're not working during quarantine. And they're like, how did you get a show during quarantine? And it's like, not only was it a show, during quarantine, but it was this show, it was Rutherford Falls. And so for it to be coming out kind of on the tail end, it's like, as things are starting to open up, it just is so much joy. And feels, it just feels like exactly what Sierra said. It feels like the beginning of something. And I think everyone feels that from, I'm touching base with folks from, I've got roots in the Northwest. I've got roots in Oklahoma, where I was born and raised, up in Montana, back east. I've got, friends that live out, that are Wampanoag, I mean, and everybody is just kind of having the same. And then not only that, but Sierra and I, got to work in New Zealand, and our Maori friends, and, it's
that's awesome.
It's Indigenous folks all over the world. And I will say, not just that, it's our non-Native friends and our non-Native allies. They're like, this is the best show. And it's not the best show just because it's Native, or it has a Native element.
Right.
It's just a great show. Yeah. And so it's been exceptional. And I will say too, on an inside track, Sierra, Sydney, Michael knows this, but thank you so much, because there's a lot of Native theater out there. Michael and I grew up in Native theater, and, I think that's where that's the foundation of our craft. And is like Native Voices from the Autry is our hometown Native theater here in Los Angeles. And it was just like, it's just like, Sierra, you just pulled like amazing, all of like, it seemed like all of Native Voices was represented. It was like, there's Jen Bobby Wash, there's Jason Grazel.
That was a weird byproduct of COVID, because, I think, and not to besmirch our friends from the North, but a lot of talent always gets pulled from Canada, and there's just incredible Native actors and actresses in Canada. But because of COVID, there was so much apprehension about flying people in. And so we kind of really had to pick and choose people. And as the numbers went up, I personally was just like really, you know, wanting to keep our set as safe as humanly possible and not put especially Indigenous people at risk. And so we were like, well, let's pull people we know.
How did Michael get there? An Uber?
Michael, we got him and made him stay. So he just stayed. And like did not leave your Airbnb for a month. He just sat there until you had to come to set. But it did affect things in a weird way. And it was the weirdest. I remember like, it was like living your dream in a nightmare because it was such a crazy time. And I had family who was battling COVID at the time. And it just was such a crazy time, but it was cool to see like a lot of, and that was the other thing too, was like, you know, when I started to kind of echo what Kimberly was saying is like, when I first wrote my first pilot, it was, you know, set on the Navajo Nation, and I got a bunch of jobs from it, and they would say, you know, oh, this is a great sample. It'll never be made, but you know, but it would be, I'm sorry, my kid is like running around in a bathing suit. But like, you know, it was very nice, that kind sort of thing of like, it'll never be made, but thanks. And there was just this narrative of like, there's no infrastructure, there's not enough actors, there's not enough writers. And we just never found that to be the case. We always had more actors than we had parts for. I remember seeing Kimberly and I was like, oh, she can be Terry's wife. This is perfect. Like we knew we could write roles with like one line people because there's so many like seasoned, really good people who just had never gotten that turn at bat. And so, and not to say that you've had a million, you're amazing. But, cause I remember seeing you on Seinfeld, like, and just, it meant so much to me to see that episode and to be included, especially for someone that like I looked up to so much. So yeah, anyway, the point is it's just been really great to kind of showcase new talent. I mean, Jana, like no one had ever seen Jana before. And I remember like people, like Native filmmakers calling and being like, where did you find her? Like where did you come from? You know? And so it's, and like to see Michael do comedy, like there was just a lot of opportunities for people and Sydney to direct comedy. Like everyone was kind of working out of their comfort zone and just nailed it. And it was really wonderful to see.
Yeah, I got that right. Oh my gosh.
And
Jana
also
is incredible.
And also the whole thing with new talent, new actors and everything, you know, it's like I feel like I know who the actors are. I feel like I know who the writers and the directors are. And on Rutherford, sort of time and time again, like a new actor would show up that I've never seen or heard from again. They're Native, they're Indigenous. Like, holy shit, this person is killing it, you know? And that happened like probably a dozen times over the course of the shoot. And like, so that, I mean, that makes me so hopeful, that the fact that I don't know all these people, you know, it just means there's more talent. There's so much talent out there.
God, that's a big deal because, you know, in Indian country, a lot of people may not realize that are watching this at ATX don't realize that one thing that most things that happen in Indian country, we know them. You know, there's a big joke of like, you know, all know each other. And it's like, they're like, no, we don't know everyone. And then they go, well, do you know, Frank from so-and-so? And you're like, well, okay, well, yeah, I actually do know him. You know, so it's kind of nice that
he's my cousin.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to hear that, oh, wait, you don't know someone. That's amazing. That means the pool is growing. You know, that's exciting stuff. And I do want to say, Michael, to you, you know, I know we talk a lot, we'll text and say positive things, but, you know, I have like, as, you know, some of you know, I'm also a Rotten Tomatoes critic, and I absolutely am in love with film and television, and you know, I've reviewed a bunch of stuff, and as you know, Sierra and Michael, Rutherford Falls got my first ever 11 out of 10, ever the first one to break into the stratosphere of outside of my ring. But I have about 10 epic TV, movie, film moments over the course of my lifetime. There are these moments that just happen. And Michael, you, sir, own 4 of those moments. Yeah, 4 of those moments. This is, and I even wrote it down to make sure I didn't forget, is Kayla Takawalker walking out, holding that machete that's dripping.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fear the Walking Dead. A casino moment, as Terry Thomas are telling Dustin about your trajectory and how the white man has screwed you over and how you have to fight back, you know, because things have gotten taken from you. Also, another moment of telling your daughter.
Didn't he direct that?
I know. Sydney, you own one of those moments. Sierra, you own one of those moments. You guys are in this, you know, it's just, and then, you know, another moment is telling your daughter that she should sell those beads for more. I was just like, that is the best, one of the best moments ever, ever, ever. And then the other moment is, of course, when you take off your shirt in Blood Quantum and your teeth marks are just all over your back. I was just like, oh my gosh, you have these epic movie moments that you own, that own a place in my brain and will be there forever. You know, enjoy. So I mean, how does it feel to have accomplished all these epic moments as an actor? I mean, you really have. You have reached this. You are the native dude superstar of Indian country. You really, really are, Michael. You really, really are. You are being presented this from me right now. I'm telling you, you have.
Thank you, Vincent. I certainly haven't done it alone. All those moments that you talk about, you know, there was like an army behind me making that happen. I think it's really gratifying. It's really gratifying, you know, the images that we're making as Indigenous people are indelible. The kinds of things that are happening, the way Sydney and Sierra were on the set with me during that episode 4 of Rutherford Falls, every take, they were just feeding me. They were just energizing me in order to deliver that speech to Dustin that way. And like we simply can't do it alone. We can't. We weren't raised that way. We're not built that way. And so those moments are examples of our collective strength and our collective creativity. I think really incredibly important thing to mention in terms of this kind of reimagining our workplaces, our workspaces, is the fact that, you know, Indian country has a billion stories. Like this first season of Rutherford Falls, you know, it's like fingernails scratching on the edge of this mountain of like complex, sophisticated stories. You know, Rutherford Falls could run 20 seasons and we wouldn't run out of storylines. You know, there's no way. And it's sort of like this area, it's unexplored, and people are like, this is such a great story. Like, that's just like some of the stories, right? So what I'm seeing is there's not only a hunger for new content, fresh content. You know, we can't remake, you know, the A-Team again, or, you know, something. But there's a more important thing happening with people like Sierra, with Sydney, with Kimberly and I, and the community of actors, is that there's ways of doing things that are truly Indigenous. You know, as a professor, we talk about ontologies, like how we know what we know. And what I've experienced on sets like Blood Quantum, on sets like Wild Indian, and absolutely on Rutherford Falls, perhaps the most of any show I've been on, is that the Indian way of being in good relation with each other, the way we support each other, the way we mentor each other. You know, Gordon Tatusis, August Schellenberg, Tantu Cardinal, they mentored me, right? So when I'm talking to Jana, you know, like I'm just like,
Augie,
I'm just transferring information because that's what we do. And so I look at Rutherford Falls, and the reason why it's so good is not just because our showrunner is brilliant, that our writers are brilliant. It's that the show was imbued with our way of doing. And the way of doing is a positive one. It's community building, it's energy building. And there was a moment on that set, like maybe 100 moments, but one moment I'll never forget. Jana and I were in the car heading to the casino conference, and Sierra threw Jana a line saying, I want you to say this line, which was an alternate take. And all of a sudden I heard this, we did the take, and there's coughing happening, you know, back at Video Village. And Sydney comes over, she's coughing because she's laughing so hard. She is barely able to talk. She goes, that line about, you know, the American Girl doll, Kaya. I was like, Jana, you nearly killed our director, because it's just energy building. And that's what I think we're doing. It's not just our stories. It's not just our bodies. It's our way of working. And I think that is actually much more of a revolutionary idea, and much more dangerous idea for reimagining how we work, how the industry could work. And I'm so grateful for it.
That's fantastic. Okay, we time flies. We've got about 5 minutes left. And I think, in my view, and you guys can tell me your thoughts, but I don't want this moment to go by, because we are all involved in this sense of the beautiful embrace and hands outreach from Mike Shore and Ed Helms, and the willingness of them to extend this beauty of an effort to work in collaboration. And I think that they could deserve a few words from what you all think, and I don't know, just words to share in the last 5 minutes or so. So we'll go with you, Sierra, first.
I'll take it. Yeah, I think, you know, many of us have gotten that phone call from non-native filmmakers or showrunners saying, oh, I made this thing about natives, and can you read it and tell me that it's fine, and I'll go make it without your influence, or can you write the Native American episode of this show that I'm not, you know, or can you, you know, and it's just a bummer when it happens. And so it's very rare that you get a call from people of Mike and Ed's caliber where they say, hey, I have half an idea, you know, do you want to collaborate and talk about it and work on it and develop it for over a year and sell it together. And so really, you know, when Michael is describing community, I think, you know, Mike Shore shows always try to say something. And I think he really wanted to talk a lot about, and as we had these discussions of, you know, what is American history and what are the narratives that are lost when we are marginalized, when you cling to these narratives, what is lost. And so I really just applaud them for having, I think, a lot of humility, a lot of curiosity, and to really walk into spaces where they are amplifying voices and are trying to, because I think they know it makes for good storytelling. It doesn't come from a sense of altruism or they're paying tithes or something. It really comes from a place of, this is a great story, this is really funny, and I want to help tell this story, you know? And I think if you come at people from any demographic with that kind of intention, I think it just makes for better storytelling and for better stories.
Yeah, nice. Kimberly?
I just, you know, I have to be really personal here for a second and just say that, you know, when I did Seinfeld, I had so much fun. I was like, I could do this every day for the rest of my life because I love comedy. It's like, I love to live there. I love, Sydney just worked on a character that nobody probably ever expected they see me play, but it's so very much in my wheel. I mean, you know, comedy's comedy. I'll go any direction, you know, I just love doing it. But it just, I never gotten a chance after that. Like, how do you, you know, it's like you get to work at that level, so you know, with Larry David and all them, and they're, you know, and you're in it, right? You're in it and playing hardball with everybody. And then it's like, nope, nothing else.
Yeah, wow.
For decades. And then it was when that was my moment, Michael, when you and I were sitting down, you know, and at that amazing lacrosse scene, and Sydney's directing and Sierra's back there feeding me. So it's exactly what Michael's saying, like feeding me energy. And we're doing it as a team. And it was so difficult. It's when I really had to use my craft as an actor to compartmentalize, to not just break down in tears at every second of, you know, not only am I getting to do comedy again, but I'm getting to do comedy with my family, you know, telling our stories in our way. So it's just, you know, we have Michael and Mike and Ed to thank for that, for being allies and allowing us to, you know, come alongside and see what we can do, get in the play box to, you know, play the sandbox together and play.
Just to piggyback off of what you said, I don't know if you remember this, but we were in some gymnasium and we were talking about, it was like they were setting up a shot, and we had like 10 minutes to kind of drink some water. And I remember you telling the story about, you were like, it's so great to be, I might misspeak, but it's like, it was so great to have a role where like you live. You were like, I'm so used to being murdered in the
Wow.
act. And it
Holy
really
moly.
shocked me because I come from like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and like horror, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And you did this thing where you mimicked being shot, because you were like, I do my own stunts and I'm really good at it. And you just went right into it in a way that I was like, oh my God. And
The Suicide Squad effect.
and it was like having to be, yeah, and it was having to be so versed at that. And I'm sure you brought so much humanity to those roles and so much talent to those roles. But it was like, I only want to write roles where you are a lacrosse mom and you're screaming at the field, and because that's my mom, you know, that's my mom. And Jana has said it in many interviews where like, she's like, the biggest difference is like, I make it to the end of the season. And there really is.
Wow.
It's not, you know, it's, yeah. And so I think that is something that we all did, you know, collectively, these incredible allies, but also us working so freaking hard and really killing it with those roles. But like, it means a lot. It means a lot to see these actors live. It's, yeah.
These amazing women have said about our collaborators, our brilliant collaborators, Mike and Ed. But yeah, I agree with Sydney. Like, the number one always sets the tone, and so does our showrunner. And the showrunner was always there, always had our backs, was always ready to fight for our perspective. You know, that way of doing, that way of knowing. And I think that's why the show speaks so truthfully to audiences, because she nailed it. And I'm grateful. It's the best role I've ever had in my life, and that's saying something. So, season 2, come on, I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, that is awesome. I appreciate you all. We are at time, so we got to wrap. But just before we go with the ATX Television Festival, we want to say thank you to you for hosting the Indigenous narrative. That is incredible. That is a step, and that is, I know I appreciate it very much. But I want to tell all of you is you all, Sierra, Kimberly, Sydney, Michael, have given me gift after gift after gift after gift. I have an incredible amount of joy in my life exponentially because of the work that you're doing. And I will be appreciative to you forever. You have given me gift after gift, as well as to Indian country. And I feel gracious love for all of you dearly for what you're doing. And I will send every single blessing that I have in my ability to you. Appreciate you all. Thank you. And again, thank you so much to the ATX Television Festival for 2021. We appreciate you having us here, and we appreciate you watching. Remember to follow them on social media, hashtag TV for all, which is in my lower corner here, and on social media at ATX Festival on social media. My name is Vincent Schilling. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you all. Have a great day and hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. Ona.